Welcome back to the Hot Women Rock radio show, empowering women leaders at menopause, where this week we're talking about breaking the silence around menopause in the workplace. And my guest is Kate Usher. So Kate is an experienced coach and change strategist with a specialism in menopause and gender equality. She works with women and organizations to create simple strategies that enable modern and supportive menopause conversations. This increases awareness of this life phase, its pivotal impact on equality across the workforce, and representation in senior and executive positions. She's an internationally published author. Her book, Your Second Phase: Reclaiming Work and Relationships During After Menopause, is available all around the world and was shortlisted for the Business Book of the Year award in 2021. Kate, welcome to the show.
Wow.
So, Kate, let's get down and dirty with it. Why is it important to organizations and employers to talk about menopause? What is the win for them?
Okay, well, there's loads of things, but essentially, primarily, the most important thing is that they retain some of their most valuable staff. So that's all about the fact that when women reach this point in their lives, just like men in their mid 40s, they are at their most valuable. They are their most qualified, their most able, their most experienced, their most networked, whether that's internally or externally. And to replace them costs a lot of money. So it's not just you're replacing like for like, because you're not. Actually, you need to factor in not only your recruitment costs, but the loss of time that it takes for you to A, recruit a new person, and then B, to get them up and running, because that takes time, even if they're an experienced individual. And it also means that you lose the investment that you've already made in that person. So you've lost all of that training, all of that mentoring, that walks out the door with them. And on that point of mentoring, they are, because of their abilities within your organization and within their industry, at that point, they can be mentors to younger people as well. And that's men and women. So it's really important that you start to look at the whole tail of employment, because that's the impact that losing someone at this point in their career has.
Yeah.
And also, we're focusing more and more on gender equality in
Yeah.
those senior roles.
And
That's really
gender
critical.
equity. Equity means you have to put a bit more resource in at this stage. It's not just about we treat everybody equally, that's great, but some people need a bit more help and support, and we get into the equity. And also thinking about your brand. I mean, it's great to see that ASOS are doing this. They will get really good publicity from this, but not only that, by supporting and talking to their women about this, they're going to understand their customers more. They're going to understand what
Yeah.
they're going through. So this does great things for their brand. Channel 4 put in place the menopause policy at the time that they were doing the Davina McCall documentary program that we saw a few months ago. It's no coincidence that they did that around that same time, but it puts Channel 4 on the moral high ground of, well, we're not only making the program, we're doing something for our staff. And you'll find this all over. You know, a lot of companies in the media, in PR, have embraced menopause in the workplace because they don't want to turn around and be publishing stuff and then go, well, actually, yeah, but we don't think it's very important. So it's about your brand and your values, as well as about retaining these really knowledgeable, experienced women, and maybe the men that are supporting those women who are feeling tired as well. Next point.
Yeah, on that point, I think it's really important, the point about brand,
Mm,
because you and values, because your values need to be lived, not just
yes.
laminated and stuck on the wall. They absolutely have to be a lived part of the people who work within the organization, so that they know that they are valued and that their contribution is valued as well.
Mm,
And if that's not the case, and internally women are not being supported, then it's a funny way how those things kind of seep out,
Yes.
and your brand does take a hit. So I was having a discussion with someone on LinkedIn the other day, and they were knocking Marks and Spencers for publicising some support that they'd given to one of their members of staff, that it doesn't affect the share price. And I said, on the contrary, I think it does, because the demographic that shops in Marks and Spencers
Yeah.
is of menopausal age, and they want to know that their peers are being supported. And as women over the age of 50 are buying 48% of all purchases in the UK, then absolutely their power is huge. So
Yeah.
we need to think about those things as well. And lastly, on the point of reputation, is if we are looking at tribunals, of which there is a massive increase this year around menopause, then if an organisation goes to tribunal because they aren't supporting their staff, that the damage that is done in that process takes a huge amount of work to come back from.
Yeah, that's important. And for our listeners in America, what we're talking about is court cases involving employment law. And there have been 4 cases decided in women's favor, that in one case, well, 2 cases, that menopause is a disability under the Equality Act in the UK. So that was really important. It doesn't mean that menopause is a disability. It meant that for those 2 women, the extent of their symptoms, their medication meant that it was a disability. And so these companies, these 4 companies, have had to pay out compensation and in some cases reinstate these employees because they didn't handle it very well. And when you read the cases, you think, I can't believe they did that. And yet this is, there's going to be a lot more of that going on. So we're really talking about the positives of your brand, living your values, your corporate responsibility, but we're also talking about retaining experienced staff, getting the best performance from them, getting the best morale. There's a whole lot of wins here, and you're avoiding the risk of ending up with court cases around how you've treated your women. And if you read the court cases, these employers did not come out well from it. And interesting that you mentioned Marks and Spencers, because they've just recently launched a whole range of menopause face products. So it would look pretty bad if they weren't supporting their staff and they were trying to get people to buy menopause products. And women at this age are holding the purse strings in the household. They are spending most of the money. So you really don't want to upset them. That was a nice way of saying it. We really don't want to upset them. You want to get them on side. You want them thinking, do you know, I'd really like to buy something from them because they're good people. Let's start. You can start with tip number 1. We'll play relay on this. What's your first tip for employers?
First tip is always awareness. We have to talk about menopause. That's the first rule. It could also be the last rule. We absolutely have to talk about menopause. So even if it's just that you put something in your weekly newsletter, or something goes on your intranet, or something goes on the notice board, whatever it is, it's about raising the awareness. It's about taking that first step and saying, this is menopause, this is what it is, and we recognize that it's a phase in women's lives.
Yeah,
So,
it's signaling to your workforce that this is a subject we talk about.
absolutely. And in doing that, you are opening the door to women to A, talk about it, B, seek support, C, be loyal and stay in your organization. It's so powerful
Yeah,
and relatively
absolutely.
easy to do.
Yeah. That is a great first tip. That would have been my first tip. um, and really getting that coming down from senior management. I've told this story before, but at Cheshire Fire, the chief fire officer came to International Women's Day wearing a t-shirt that said, "Ask me about menopause."
That's incredible.
Right from the top, he's saying, "I'm not embarrassed about this. You can't embarrass me about this. Come and talk to me about it." So once you've got that awareness, tip number 2 from me is to ask your employees what support they want. Ask everybody, send out a very simple survey. You could do that on Menopause Awareness Day. Doesn't have to have much in it, but do you feel comfortable talking about menopause? Do you feel comfortable about talking to somebody in your line management about menopause? Would you attend a menopause awareness event? Asking just a few simple questions, you might be amazed at the volume of response you get. You might be sitting there thinking, nobody in my organization is interested in this. I worked with another organization and they put out a survey, and within 24 hours, they had 200 responses of people wanting training, of wanting to know more, of wanting more information. So don't assume that because you haven't talked about it before, nobody's interested. They are interested.
They are.
They just need you to open the door and say it's okay. We've got a minute to go, Kate. What's your third tip?
Oh my goodness me. So we've had awareness, we've had ask. Then the next thing is has to be if you have got information, make it readily accessible. If you do have a policy or guidelines and you've hidden it like 18 layers down on your intranet, what that actually says is don't bother asking us because we don't want to know. Make it really visible so that women can access it and that they can understand it clearly. And so it's not in legalese, it's not in legal speak. It's actually a clear set of what's offered, how it's offered, and if they need to provide something as well, like a GP letter or something along those lines. So make that information readily accessible.
We're up to tip number 4. And for me, this one is really about if you get that feedback, take action on it. So if you've done that survey, you've raised awareness, you've done the survey, you're starting those conversations up. Now, what do you need to do? And it could be that you need to have some awareness raising sessions. Might be lunch and learn type sessions online or in person. So, but that's if you're being asked for that. Your line managers might be asking for some training on how to have that conversation. Don't let this become that piece of shelfware that you've just done it. Okay, it's a one and done. We did that thing on Menopause Awareness Day. That's it. It's over. It's about, right, so now what was the feedback that we got and what's our next step? And if it is around awareness and training, really don't assume that the women employees that you have or the men employees understand what menopause is. I've had women enroll for courses, they've come in and they've said this is their first opportunity to talk about it to anyone. And they want to know the very basic things. And you can be surprised how the conversation opens up and how many questions you get. So it's a good idea to have somebody come in who is an expert in this area. Don't spend your time becoming an expert. There are people like Kate and I who are experts in this area. We've put months, hours, weeks of time into this. And we can just help your employees understand what's happening, and you'll be surprised how much better they feel just from some knowledge. So that would be my next thing, is look at the responses you got to your survey and now what can you do? Right, I'm taking a breath, Kate. What's tip number 5?
Can I just make a comment on your
Mm,
tip? And that is that this needs to be, we organizations need to recognize that this isn't just a female only series of
yes.
questions, in the sense that I was working with one of the utilities in the UK and they did sessions for men. And that was just to allow the men to have a space where they could ask the questions without feeling silly or uncomfortable or fearing that, someone might laugh at them or that they would offend someone. Um, it they need to sit there with somebody who isn't going to feel concerned about that. And an expert is going to be able to answer those questions without any concerns whatsoever. And I think that's really important. So, my next tip is to create a pathway to
Mm.
support. And that is a clear and open understanding of who the people are you need to speak to. Now, I was speaking to an IT firm and they said to me, is this like mental health responders or
Mm.
first aiders? And I said, yes, absolutely. They're advocates. So you can go to them and say, I'm really struggling and I'm having a hard time. And you know that this is someone who has a full understanding of what the organization offers and how to access it so that it takes some of the pressure off women so that they can then move forward, gain the support that they need, stay in their career and ensure that they're nurtured right the way through. And
Yeah.
also from the top down as well, that supports managers so that they're not constantly the first line of support. They
Mm.
feel supported, and it's only if it needs to come up to that next level that they're actually on the other side of the desk. So it works both ways, and it's a really effective way of creating a sort of pathway to support.
I love it. I love it. A pathway to support. We all need that. So, my next tip is this number 6. I'm losing count now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I think we're up to tip number 6. And so, thinking about what changes you could make in your workplace that are going to support women. Now, in the UK, we talk about this in a legal term, which is called reasonable adjustments. What reasonably could you adjust that is going to help the women in your workplace? Now, before your heart starts beating and you think this is going to cost you a lot of money, it can be really simple stuff. It might be a change. I mean, I always assume that people at work can go and use the bathroom whenever they want to, but it's not the case. And for some women at menopause, their periods, I've dared to say the word periods. Their periods might be getting heavier and more frequent, and they might need to go to the bathroom a lot more than they were before. They might just need to go and have a wee more often than they were before. And if your policy that you've got at the moment only allows them to go at certain times, it's going to be an issue. So it's like reviewing something like that and thinking, well, how could I make this easier? If your employees have to wear uniforms, were they designed for women? Is there any flexibility in them? Are they made of man-made fibers? Is there something which is going to cause women to sweat a lot more because of the hot flushes? There you are. I've said women sweat as well. I am revealing all kinds of stuff. Yeah, I know. It's a shocker. It's really about thinking very practically. Have you got sources of cold drinking water readily available? Can women just go and get a drink of water? Now, one of my own favorites that most people don't even think about, if you've got a big open plan office and perhaps you're doing hot desking, which is the situation I was in my last corporate job, you had to get there first thing in the morning to get your desk, plant a flag in it. But you couldn't have your own storage space at that desk because you didn't know you were going to be there the next day. And you were given these open boxes, are they called trugs, like you get in the garden, and then you had a space in a drawer to put them in. Now, if you're a woman who's got a lot of sanitary ware in there and you've got your HRT drugs and you've got a load of other stuff that's connected with your menopause, do you honestly want to be carrying it through the office and putting it in a drawer with everybody else's stuff? You need private storage. Let me put out a call for that. If you're doing hot desking, think about the people who have very personal items that they need to store. Oh my goodness, there's only time. I don't think we've got time for another tip because I just wanted to say, Kate, thanks for sharing everything that you've shared. And if you're listening and you're an employer and you think, oh, if I've got to go and sell this idea to somebody, go to patduckworth.com/mind the gap, and you will be able to download a free copy of the first chapter of the book, which has all of the business case in it. So please go and download that so you understand why this is a workplace issue. Thank you so much, Kate. I knew the time would go quickly, but we have shared a lot of wisdom, so it's absolutely brilliant.